Welcome back. Now, Kenya's Senate began impeachment hearings against Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua on Wednesday, hours after a court said the proceedings were constitutional, clearing the way for a vote on his dismissal this week. This follows Kenya's National Assembly voting to impeach the Deputy President on 11 charges, which include corruption, undermining the government, and stirring ethnic hatred. However, Gachagua has denied all charges. He had launched a legal challenge against the impeachment proceedings in the High Court, but Judge Erick Ogolla said the process could go ahead. Now, the Deputy President was Ruto's running mate in their 2022 election win, helping secure vital votes from the popular central Kenyan region. But he has since fallen out and political alliances have shifted. So joining us on this to discuss this is Tella Nzomo, Program Officer, Siasa Place, Nairobi. Tella, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. Now, how have Kenyans reacted to the impeachment and the corruption charges against the Vice President? Do you see any significant shifts in public sentiments toward the corruption charges?
I don't think Kenyans think, or the entire process has not been about corruption. This has been more of a political process. And I think Kenyans know and understand that this is more of a political issue. I think Kenyans have actually been a bit feeling like their issues are not actually being dealt with, that the cost of living is not being dealt with, and rather our politicians are busy playing politics and trying to maneuver in a political manner rather than actually dealing with Kenyan issues.
So one has to ask how this situation reflects Kenya's historical struggle with corruption, and what can we learn from the previous high-profile corruption cases in the country?
This is not really about corruption, to be particularly honest with you. It's more of a fight between the president and his deputy. In the previous administration, we saw an issue where there was corruption. We saw corruption issues between. We saw issues between the president and his deputy, and we saw Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto actually fall out, and that led to an issue where William Ruto said that the same thing wouldn't happen to him and his deputy president, but actually now we've seen an even worse fallout where it's actually led to impeachment. So this has not been really about corruption; it's been about the fight between the two individuals, or rather the two main people in our country.
Okay, then. I hear you there, but in your opinion, what does the impeachment of the high-ranking officials like the Vice President say about the effectiveness of Kenya's accountability mechanism? Are they becoming more robust or merely just symbolic?
I think it's more symbolic. I would answer it that way, because I think this is more about yes, there have been allegations against the deputy president. I don't want to say that he's been corrupt, because I will be, judging him, and I don't want to do that, in a public place. But there have been allegations. There are also allegations against other government officials. We saw allegations against the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, but nothing happened to the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture. Actually, he was taken for impeachment, but it was actually shot down. So if you compare the two cases, you realize that it's not about corruption. This is about politics. So in both cases were brought to the floor of the House on corruption matters, one against the Agriculture CS, one against the Deputy President. And what ended up happening was that only one was actually charged. Only one is charged. And the way things seem, he's about to actually be impeached, at least the way things are going.
Finally, Tella, how do you see the Vice President's impeachment aligning with the recent protests? Are these protests influencing government's actions, or are they being overshadowed by political maneuverings?
They're being overshadowed, but actually that's a perfect way of putting it. They're actually being overshadowed by political maneuverings. And I think that's actually a very sad thing of what's happening in the country. I think that what happened what happened with the protests was actually quite important. Kenyans came out and they were arguing against, number one, the finance bill, against the high cost of living. They came out in numbers, and it wasn't about tribalism. It wasn't about political parties. This was actually Kenyans coming and actually, protesting against government policies. And since then, what has happened is that we have seen government realigning. We saw William Ruto starting to pick cabinet secretaries from the ODM party. We saw, and since then now, it's led to this issue of the deputy president. So it's actually overshadowed it, and in my opinion, that's quite unfortunate.
Well, thank you very much, Teller, for joining us this morning to discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you once again for having me.